Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for the City of Saratoga Springs for January 12, 2023. I've asked new Commissioner Doug Wilden to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First thing, the next thing on the agenda is a roll call, and all of the Planning Commission is in attendance this evening. So we have a quorum present. The next item is the oath of office for new Planning Commissioner Doug Wilden. So I believe, is he going to go join you down there? Or?
No.
Okay.
I'll have to try and get in between all the desks, so we'll just have you stand there.
You bet.
All right. Oh, okay. All right, raise your hand. I, Douglas Wilden,
I, Douglas Wilden,
having been appointed to the position of Planning Commissioner,
having been appointed to the position of Planning Commissioner,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, defend, and
obey
and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and the Constitution of the State of Utah,
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and I will discharge the duty. Is that right there? Discharge the duties of my office with fidelity. Sorry.
Good job. All right,
Thank you.
can I have you sign right there? Welcome.
Thank you and congratulations, Commissioner Wilden. The next item.
Hold on a minute.
Okay.
It's live, the camera just didn't change. Go ahead, I'll switch the camera.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is an election for a new chair and vice chair for two-year term. So I will open it up for nominations for a new chair.
I nominate Troy Cunningham as the chair for the Planning Commission.
I'll second that.
Thanks. So we have a motion from Commissioner Kilgore and a second from Commissioner McConkey. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, we have a commission chair for the next, well, a year because my term ends.
Is that right?
All right. Yes. All right. So now we'll go ahead and open up for nomination for vice chair. And I'll go ahead and nominate Ken for the vice chair because ever since I started, he's always sat to this side of me, and I want to continue that.
My qualification.
Yes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Cunningham and a second from Commissioner, I was going to say Barton, but it's Burns, sorry. Any question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Thanks.
Ken, when is your term up?
I have 2 more years, I think.
Okay.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is we set aside time for public input on our meetings. This time right now is available for any person to express ideas, concerns, comments, questions, issues. They're not listed as public hearing on the agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. There is one public hearing on the agenda tonight. So if you're here to make comments about the changes to the gateway overlay, we'll allow time for you to make those comments during that. But if you're here to make comments about anything else, this would be the time to do. Okay, I'll go ahead and close the time for public comment at this time in the meeting, and we'll move to the next item, which is the public hearing for amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, Chapters 19.02, 19.04, .11, and 19.04.14 Gateway Overlay Use Amendments, and then 19.05 Car Wash Spacing with Residential Zones, 19.13.4 and 19.14.5 as site approval plan process. And this is going to be presented by Gina Grand Prix and by Frederick Donaldson, our city attorney. So it looks like Fred is up first.
Gina's going to go first, but I'm just going to let her sit. She just recently had foot surgery.
All right, so let's
Thank
make
you.
sure.
I've got a boot on, or a, excuse me, a surgical shoe on my foot, so I'd rather not stand for too long. But these code amendments are ones that I believe you've seen before, the gateway overlay use amendments, as well as the car wash spacing from residential zones. I don't believe you've seen. And then this, you're now seeing a site plan approval process. The council has asked for some of these. There is also, what was thrown in the definitions was the tobacco real specialty store definition. There are changes for that. You'll notice that in your staff report, it was all blocked as red, underlined. That is the correct code. What paper that I put in front of you just shows the strikeout of what the code used to say, so that you'll see the differences there. It's not here nor there. I mean, we can replace the whole code. This just shows you what is being replaced. So let me get moving to the slides. So as said, the definition for retail tobacco specialties business, gateway overlay prohibited uses, car wash spacing, and the site plan approval. So we'll go ahead and start with 1902-265. So this is just the simple changes that were made regarding tobacco specialty stores, switching it to business and including some additional verbiage there.
Yeah, just to add to that, the council wanted to ensure that smoke shops and vape shops were covered. And so looking at the state code, there's kind of two categories of smoke shops or vape shops, which are, one is a general tobacco store, and the other one is this retail specialty business, tobacco specialty business. And so that's how we've now broken out our code as well.
Any questions on this section, discussion you want to have on this? Oh, that's right, sorry. This is a public hearing, I apologize.
Yeah, so you need to,
I need to go through it all.
yeah, go through it all, then we'll,
Hold that thought, Rachel. So the next one is the Title 19 Amendment 1904-14. This is the gateway overlay prohibited uses, including alcohol beverage, state liquor store, automobile rental and leasing agency, automobile repair, major and minor, including repair of all vehicles, bar, building materials with outdoor storage, bus lot, cannabis production establishments, kennel commercial, light manufacturing, non-depository institutions, and recycling facilities. And retail uses, just the addition of general tobacco retailer as defined in Utah State Code, medical cannabis pharmacies, retail tobacco specialty businesses, parlor, tattoo parlor, storage, self-storage, or mini storage units, outdoor storage, vehicle storage, and vehicle impound yards. And then onto the car wash spacing. So some of this, the verbiage here, as measured from the closest part of a building to the closest part of the other building. So giving some detail there. And then each car wash full service shall be at least 500 feet from residential dwellings. residential zone boundaries, and residential property boundaries. The measurement shall be from the closest edge of the footprint of the car wash building to the closest residential dwelling, residential zone boundary, or residential property boundary, whichever is more restrictive. And then as far as the site plan approvals, the council would like this site plan approval to go back to the city council for approval, so they will return as the land use authority. So the planning commission will give a recommendation to the city council for approval. So this is all so the city council approval will be all non-residential site plans amendments on all the gateway overlay site plans. The planning commission approval will still be multifamily 2 and 3 family site plans and major amendments. And staff approval, or the planning director, will be minor site plan amendments. And this is the verbiage that is included in that section. So with that, staff recommends approval of these amendments.
Thank you, Gina. This is a public hearing, so I'm going to go ahead and open up for public comment at this time. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and read these 2 that were received today through email. The first is from, John Zilch. He says, "Good evening to members of the Planning Commission of Saratoga Springs. My name is John Zilch. I am the Director of Development of Compton Addy. Compton Addy is based in Cincinnati, Ohio. We are presently working with Pet Suites on various development sites in Salt Lake City area. Pet Suites is a national tenant focused on dog boarding, daycare, grooming, and training. I apologize that I will not be able to attend tonight's meeting. We will be represented at the meeting by Brad Draper with Mountain West Commercial Real Estate, Pet Suites regional site broker. When we located this project in August 2022, we met with the city to discuss our proposed use. Due to the residential expansion in the area, there is an increased need for high-quality commercial pet kennels. COVID has only served to increase that demand. When I met with the city, we were told and confirmed with our legal counsel that the Pet Suites use is a permitted use in the city of Saratoga Springs' existing C2 zoning code. While Pet Suites use was permitted by the existing zoning code, the site was not large enough for the existing parking requirements. We spoke with the owner of the site about acquiring more land for our parking, but that was not feasible. We then met again with the city to explain the situation. We also explained that customers would drop and pick off their pets at various times, so parking would not be an issue. The city of Saratoga Springs agreed. We received the staff recommendation of approval of a code amendment to allow our parking. On December 1st, 2022, the Planning Commission followed the staff recommendation and approved the code amendment for parking. On December 6th, 2022, City Council voted against the proposed code amendment, not based upon the parking, but based upon the use. Again, Pet Suites use is a permitted use under the existing C2 zoning code. After the unexpected vote of City Council, we were informed that we could now purchase additional land to satisfy the parking requirements because a proposed sale had fallen through. We contacted the city again, but we are told that the City Council was now going to expedite an approval process so that our use would no longer be permitted. Obviously, this expedited approval process is concerning. To anticipate and again clarify various points, Pet Suites is a national tenant. I have attached photos for your review. They signed 20-year leases with extensions, so they intend to occupy the space for many years. Their buildings are beautiful and are embraced by communities around the United States. The exterior exercise areas for the animals are fenced with multiple materials in compliance with applicable building codes. When the animals are outside exercising, there are 1 to 3 attendants with them. As a general rule, pet owners view their pets as part of their families. They want to care for them at the highest level. They want ease of dropping off, picking up the pets, but they also want to make sure they are being handled, fed, groomed, etc. at the highest level. During COVID, we saw one of the highest upticks in people getting dogs. Now that people are going back to work, they want a place for their pets to go where they can get the interaction they're used to when people are working at home with them. We have posted on many of Saratoga Springs' social media pages with a lot of support from your residents wanting to Pet Suites in Saratoga Springs. We confidently believe it will be a great service for its residents. I'm asking that the Planning Commission leave commercial kennels in the current gateway and C2 zoning. We have been working on this project since August under the direction of Saratoga Springs that our use is fully permitted in this zoning. To date, we have spent over $45,000 on this project based on the understanding that our use was allowed by zoning code. We have an application submitted with the city for our site plan approval. Thank you, Compton Addy, John Zilch. I think that was way over 3 minutes. This has been placed in your Dropbox, as well as the following letter. This one was written to us by Casey W. Jones of Strong and Haney Law Firm. This is, Dear Planning Commission of Saratoga Springs, I represent the Pepperdine Homes LLC, the owner and developer of the Steel Ridge Plaza, a subdivision located generally at 333 East Crossroads Boulevard, Saratoga Springs, Utah. I write regarding the overlay ordinance changes the city is proposing, which would restrict certain uses for the Steel Ridge Plaza. Please accept this letter as Pepperdine's formal objection to the inclusion of the Steel Ridge Plaza in the proposed overlay zoning map. This objection is based upon the legal doctrine referred to as zoning estoppel. On or about September 15, 2021, Pepperdine purchased the approximate 10.2 acres that makes up the Steel Ridge Plaza. Since the purchase of the property, Pepperdine has spent over $1,100,000 on improvements to the land, including but not limited to engineering plans, permit fees, demolition and installing sewer, storm drains, utilities, etc. On or about August 29, 2022, Pepperdine paid its fees to the city, and a bond was issued for Pepperdine to begin its improvements on the property. A large portion of the $1,100,000 of the expenses were incurred after this time. The improvements were made in reliance upon the current zoning of the property in the C2 zone. The new overlay plan significantly narrows the permitted uses for the development. The restriction on commercial kennels directly affects Pepperdine's current plans with the property. In August 2022, Pepperdine entered into a contract with Pet Suites, a commercial kennel, for the purchase of the lot in the subdivision. The new overlay plan arbitrarily prohibits commercial kennels. Utah courts have long recognized that well-established doctrine called zoning estoppel. This doctrine prohibits a government entity from exercising its zoning powers, prohibit proposed land use when a property owner, relying reasonably and in good faith on some governmental act or omission, made a substantial change in position or incurred such extensive obligations or expenses that it would be highly inequitable to deprive the owner of his right to complete his proposed development. He cites Utah Supreme Court, Fox versus Park City. Pepperdine began its improvements in reliance upon the current C2 zoning, as has spent nearly $1,200,000 in reliance upon the zoning code in place at the time it purchased the property and started its improvements. Pepperdine did not learn of the overlay plan until late December 2022, after incurring the nearly $1,200,000 in improvement costs. It would therefore be inequitable and contrary to well-established Utah law to apply the overlay restrictions to the Steel Ridge Plaza. For the reasons stated above, Pepperdine respectfully requests the city not to include Steel Ridge Plaza in the proposed overlay zoning map. All rights reserved. Very truly yours, Strong and Haney, Casey W. Jones.
Any other public comment? Go ahead.
I have notes, I hope you don't mind. I'm here on behalf of Pet Suites. We offer many services. Oh, sorry, Brad Draper. My bad. I'm new to this.
I forgot to mention to list your name.
Cool. Brad Draper, here on behalf of Pet Suites. We offer many services, from boarding to daycare to training to grooming. Pet Suites is ultimately one big family. Playful, passionate, professional, and personal. That's the 4 Ps to which we guide our business. And Pet Suites is a beautiful cement tilt building with masonry. It's not typically what you think of when you think of kennels. We started this journey back in August 2022 and had approvals from the city, from Saratoga Springs, and as well as review from our legal team that the use was permitted, as well as current C2 zoning. We truly feel Pet Suites not only adds to the value of the city of Saratoga Springs, but also fulfills a need that is ever present and growing ever since COVID, aka the growth of our fur babies. I love my fur babies. Pet Suites signs 20-year leases and oftentimes extends these leases. Pet Suites is truly in it for the long haul. And we truly feel that we are a staple in the community. There seems to be a community acceptance and excitement from our social media engagement. There are 120 Pet Suite locations across America that are beloved and we are here and excited to ensure success here in the city of Saratoga Springs. I am asking that the Planning Commission leave commercial kennels in the current gateway and C2 zoning. We have been working on this project, as stated, ever since August, under the direction of Saratoga Springs, that our use is fully permitted in this zoning, and it has been. To date, we have spent over $45,000, of which, if this change happens, we will lose. And we ask that the zoning remain intact. Thank you.
Hi, Planning Commission. My name is Nate Monson. I represent, as a real estate agent, the landowner for the land in question with Pet Suites. I live just down the street here. As you heard from our client's attorney, there's numerous concerns with this item that's before you tonight. Certainly been something that's been changed as we've been operating in good faith with a potential buyer for one of our lots of this land. We also feel that it's a great benefit to many of the residents of Saratoga Springs. So apart from having some opposition to a number of the prohibited uses that are being included under this item, I think we also have opposition to the amount of the land. Our client purchased 10.2 acres, all of which is currently being shown to fall under the overlay zone. And as our attorney pointed out, I think that there's grounds that none of it should be included, as we've been making substantial improvements to the land under the assumption that it was a regional commercial zone and negotiating with particular buyers that have uses that are approved under regional commercial zoning. But at the very least, we feel that the gateway overlay zone should only encumber the corner of that much larger assemblage of subdivided lots. As part of this, we have made John Zilch, who's the developer and the buyer for this lot, has made a handful of posts on Facebook on your city page regarding the pet kennel use. And we've had a pretty tremendous response compared to some of the other posts that have been on the same city page. There's not a lot of engagement with the community, but this is one that was very active with your residents supporting the use. So I'd like to read a sampling. I don't think there's enough time in the 3 minutes to go over all the positive feedback we got, but I want to give you some insight into a handful of your residents and how they feel about Pet Suites coming to Saratoga Springs. Jim Cohn said, "This would be a great addition to Saratoga Springs and wish our elected officials would stop changing zoning at the 12th hour for reasons unknown." Jane Newman said, "I think this is a business that Saratoga Springs greatly needs. The best place I can find for my dog is all the way in Pleasant Grove." Daisy and Jim Thomas stated, "Good luck. This sounds great. I checked out a couple of your locations websites and they look great." Jade Chapman said, "Very supportive. This would be a great addition to Saratoga Springs. Given how many dog families there are, there seems to be an increasing need." Gina Garner-Nieder stated, "We definitely need your business here. I would love to have a doggy daycare much closer to home. I can't attend tonight's meeting, but I will send you out." Katharina Weyerholt-Watson said, "We need pet boarding here. I hope you can get this straightened out." Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So my name's Trent Maddox. I'm actually the guy that owns all that stuff. So I own Still Ridge. I just wanted, I know our goal here is just to make the city look beautiful, right? I mean, that's really the goal. And my promise to you guys is that's my intent. So regardless of what happens here tonight, the overlays, what's going to be in there or not, I actually plan on keeping half of the project forever. I'm local. I'm not a national brand. We're just a small developer. So most of the stuff that's going in there, I'm actually going to keep. So I care probably more about that project than anybody in this room, of how it actually will end up looking. So I guess my promise to you is that regardless of what happens, my number one goal is that it actually looks amazing when people drive into our city. The other thing too that I'm even willing to do is, because it's right there at the entrance, you know, when you come in from Lehigh into the city, is we could do some type of monument if you guys want to on that corner piece of mine. We've talked about some stuff like that as a team. like do some type of welcome to Saratoga if you want to do something like that we've seen in other places. So that's on the table. I'd be willing to talk to you guys about it if you want as well. And then also, I'm just available to talk to you if you ever want to talk to it, because I know I don't want this to turn into a big to-do like it kind of has already. I know we've been back here now. This is my third time, and I think it's the fourth time you guys have actually talked about it. So I don't want to be a headache, but ultimately the goal is to make it beautiful, and I think we're all probably on the same page as that. So I just wanted you to know, and again, thanks for your efforts. Appreciate it.
I'm going to close public comment at this time. I'll turn it over to the commission for comments and questions. Commissioner Kilgore.
So the site plan had been submitted, according to, one of the comments. Now, is that for I guess that's for the previous property? Is that? Are you regarding Pet Suites? Pet Suites, I'm sorry, yeah.
Comment on that. So Pet Suites has actually submitted a concept plan. They have not submitted a site plan.
City attorney has a comment.
It was the same comment.
Okay.
They've submitted a concept plan, but not a site plan.
Commissioner Burns was in first.
Okay, so I had a couple of things. So the change in verbiage on the tobacco shops, does that exactly mirror the state's verbiage?
Yes, it does.
Awesome. Does the general or the entry level overlay, whatever it's called, does the overlay go where the new, like we've got some areas set aside for the marina? Does it go over that marina area?
No, it doesn't, because the city boundary is more east than the proposed marina. I can pull up the map to show you.
That's okay. And then it seems like we have gone back and forth with this a few times. What is the qualifier on which businesses are being allowed and which ones are not? Like, we're not doing kennels, but we are doing sexually oriented businesses, or we're not doing vape shops, but we are doing sexually oriented businesses. Or am I reading this wrong?
You mean we're allowing them? No, we're not allowing them. If they're listed there, they're not allowed.
It's listed in the staff packet, is it not?
As a
Yeah,
prohibited.
the listed ones are prohibited.
Right.
I read that wrong. Sorry, everyone.
I believe years ago, there was a gateway overlay, and it happened to be right here at the Crossroads and Redwood Road. And I believe that's where some of this has come from. However, we sat down as staff and we went through all of the uses that are within these zones at the entrances of our city. And what do we want? What did we, as planners, feel like was the best thing to go there? So.
Yeah, and I can add to that. I mean, really what we're looking for are businesses that are welcoming, that create a pleasant aesthetic as you enter the city. So we try to think of uses that, might have storage, outdoor storage or things like that don't, someone stacking tires as you come into Saratoga Springs, that doesn't create a good image. So we wanted to, think of what is welcoming and pleasing as you enter the city. And so that's how we came on the list that's in your packet that you see.
Does that help answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. And in part, I read that wrong, and so then my brain had to.
That's okay.
Well, you guys answered it also. Sorry. Okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burns. Commissioner McConkey?
Yeah. I'd like to know what the attorney's thoughts are of the claims that was made. Shouldn't say claims, I should more appropriately say the thoughts about the level of investment to the land improvements and the concerns there about it being in violation of,
I don't think I can comment on that.
okay.
Because it's legal arguments that are being made, and I would be responding to legal arguments. I can tell you the factual circumstances are that they haven't submitted a site plan. They've submitted a concept plan.
Okay.
So
A better question, is there other improvements in that gateway overlay zone area, other improvements that have been made and approved by the city that we're aware of?
that's a factual question. I don't have any reason to think that they haven't done work on the property, but I can't speak to that. I don't know. Their comment letters and their comments that they've said today say that there are improvements.
So is there a land disturbance permit that's been issued?
I believe there is a subdivision that has been approved there. As far as I know.
I'm not trying to ask any loaded questions.
No,
kind
no,
of
you're
standing the status
good.
quo from,
That's a good question. So let me just pull up the map so you can see what's approved in that portion of our city. So we have it is the Still Ridge Plaza subdivision that has been approved and recorded. So we can pull up the plat so you can see. So this has been approved. Now, when it was approved, it is a commercial subdivision because it's in a regional commercial zone. So it was asked of us to get a gateway overlay zone submitted, so you'd have voted on the location of where those gateways are. And now we're talking about the uses that are prohibited in that area. So
yeah.
it was easier to go with prohibited uses than it would be to say these are the allowed uses.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And what's being exempted, in my opinion, there's the majority would not most likely be there anywhere, but that's just a guess. But
Make a clarifying statement here. So the, what you see on the screen, this is the approved subdivision. And so when this was approved, we didn't know what uses were going to go there. And so now we have site plan applications coming in, Pet Suites and others. And so now those applications are coming in and it's solidifying what that use is going to be on the particular property. And so
right.
that's just so
And
happens.
the site plans that have come in, certainly before,
So, and to further clarify that, before a site plan can be submitted on one of these lots, they have to submit a concept plan. So they basically have to tell us what they imagine going there, and then once we go through that review, then they submit their site plan. So we go through our code on concepts, tell them, hey, these are, X, Y, and Z, these are the things that you need to do and look for. And then you need to submit your site plan based off of our comments. So it is not a vested application, and they have done their due diligence in looking to see what they can and cannot do in this area. So, not to discredit the work that they've done in doing this, in the process, we have had a pending ordinance in place so that we can address this. This is something that the council has been asking for a while. And so we have been moving on it as quickly as we can. So,
and the intent's not to prohibit
no, it's,
some lucrative business opportunities there, but
no,
I think
it's not.
the question is, and I want to clarify, especially regarding the kennel, it's not that we don't want a kennel like Pet Suites to be in Saratoga.
Correct. It doesn't mean that we don't want
Whether-
them here. It's just the location.
It's whether or not an entry into the city of something like that is if the citizens feel, and we are citizens, feel that that's an appropriate
Correct.
environment to,
Right.
welcoming environment to come.
Right, and we've had this discussion here on the Planning Commission before. What do we want our gateways to look like? And so this is part of that discussion. So what uses are we wanting there not to be there to be attractive for our city? When people are coming into our city, we have some very big gateways. We've got, North Redwood Road, we've got State Road 73. We have, with Crossroads, Pony Express, Pioneer Crossings. All of those areas, we have a large flux of people coming into our city. What do we want that to look like? And that's the purpose.
Our city attorney had a comment.
I think that a car wash had submitted a site plan in this subdivision. Yes. So just so you know.
Yeah. And so
That's the only one I'm aware of. I don't know, the landowner might know better what site plans have actually.
Yeah, so there was a comment that was made about, it was at the time an RC zone. Just wanted to clarify, this is still an RC zone, just with some additional guidance, as we mentioned. Appreciate the feedback, certainly, that's come in. There's certainly some concerns, some conversation in the past that we've had as a commissioner since I think I've been here 2.5 years, about not wanting to just be a continuation of, the metropolis, if you will. So you don't know when you enter and leave Saratoga Springs. Certainly without going overboard, we've desired that people recognize when they enter the city and they know when they leave. And that they have a positive feeling that they want to be here, they want to play here, work here, and live here. And I feel like that's this effort on the overlay zone is trying to achieve that, and I agree with that. So and appreciate that. Appreciate the staff and what they've done to put this together. If I can move to the proposal for the change in the, I don't know how to say this, responsibility of the Planning Commission versus City Council. Do you want me to go there later?
Really quick, Mr. Chair, I kind of want to guide our discussion this evening. Could I propose that we kind of discuss one each item at a time versus a shotgun blast of the 4 things that are before us?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And so we're on
All right,
the.
I don't want to, I kind of want to hear each
appreciate
other
that.
on
I
each
agree.
subject matter versus, because by then I'll forget all the good things you said.
Oh, you're so
And,
So let's do the.
That's all I have on
the
that, so,
basis.
yes,
Okay.
I think that's a
Then
great idea.
Commissioner Ryan was next, and then Commissioner Kilgore.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just a couple things like for my benefit, being a citizen volunteer, trying to better understand how we pick winners and losers, a little bit around the time frame, and I'm going to draw on a distinction, which we're taught to do in a legal education, and try to figure out why one use is permitted and another is not. So the first things first, why does a site plan win and a concept plan doesn't? Why have we decided as a city to say, as long as the site plan's in before this happens, you win, versus a concept plan, you don't? What is the background to that?
So a concept plan is there, like I had said previously, is to say, kind of get some, it's your napkin drawing. That's what I like to call it. It's to get an idea saying, hey, it's doing your due diligence. What is it that I need to do to move forward to a site plan? I can show you the definition of that in our code. We do define a concept plan. And that is There's a difference.
Yeah, Gina, I appreciate that. I think I understand the difference between the two. I'm trying to understand the difference as to why we've drawn the line to say, so long as Tommy's Car Wash, I think it's called Tommy's, so long as Tommy's got their site plan in, we're going to grandfather it, the discussion has gone away. Pet Suites has not to that point yet, and so therefore, they lose. Does that make sense? Like, why is the distinction, why is the finish line at the site plan versus the concept plan? And so I'll follow that up with another question.
Go ahead.
Is there a better line of demarcation that we could ultimately settle on as a city that would allow us to move these gateway overlays forward, but still consider and have consideration for, we have this public comment, the numbers are there. Again, we don't want to comment whether those are, the actual figures or whatnot. I guess that's neither here nor there, but certainly there's been some significant investment made. And so we ought to, at least in my opinion, try to have some consideration for that. So I'm just trying to understand why all of a sudden this is the finish line, it works for us, and this is not the finish line, it doesn't work for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that just common practice in the planning community? I'm just trying to get a better understanding.
Right. It is actually common practice in the planning, in our planning realm. And most jurisdictions do not consider a concept plan as a vested right, property right. And Fred, correct me if I'm wrong on that. So we have drawn that line in our code, and it's not subjective to the type of use or who is putting their application in for a site plan sooner than the other. Everybody that is wanting, we've got several businesses, several property owners that have put a lot of effort and money into a concept plan and walked away from it. There's a reason for doing a concept plan so that a property owner can say, hey, is it going to be worth it to invest even more? Our site plan is 10 times more descriptive and requires so much more in-depth work from engineering, hydrology, traffic studies, all of that is required at the site plan. So a concept plan is there to help say, hey, is it going to be worth my time and money? That's how I look at it. As far as our codes is very delineative in that a concept plan is not a vested right, whereas a site plan is. And so we're not going to separate that or ignore that. And we've been very clear with all of the applicants that come in that you have to have a site plan for vesting.
That sounds good. I just appreciate the background, better understanding. I think it helps us get all on the same page, helps me get on the same page to understand why we've chosen the line we've chosen that we have. You mentioned in your comments, Gina, that the council's wanted this for some time. As staff, we've been working on it for a while. Could you kind of define those timeframes for me? We've given a rough timeframe from our applicant. Said, I believe it was August, and if I misspeak, you all can correct me. Said August, they've started working with the city from that time. How does that line up with one, the desire from the council, and two, the work from the city?
I wish I had a solid answer for you on that. I know we've been talking about it for almost a year. So council has asked for this gateway overlay for, if I can remember right, almost over a year. They've been asking for it. So and I'm guessing on that, I'm trying to think of the first time that I heard gateway overlay.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Based on what I have been told and understand, is that council has wanted this for almost a year or about a year.
If not longer.
Okay. So I have and thanks for accommodating me in some of these off-the-wall questions that I have, but just to better help understand. So currently if we go to permitted and not permitted uses, we will permit an animal hospital in the gateway overlay, my understanding. What happens when that animal hospital wants to board animals for a time being and/or decides that Rex is severely injured and Rex needs a play yard to go out and walk around in, and therefore builds a cinder block wall similar to what we've seen Pet Suites look like, and Rex gets that play yard because it's an animal hospital, but Rex doesn't get that play yard because we're calling it Pet.
That's a good question.
The distinction.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and I thought that was included. I thought animal hospital. I've been looking at the gateway overlay due to Wander, because Wander has commercial areas in in our gateway. And that was something that did come up. I thought it was in here, but
And if I'm wrong, anyone else on the
but
commission?
that is a
correct me.
good question. An animal hospital, we would have to look at our definitions.
Yeah, there
to see
are
what the-
different definitions for an
different-
animal hospital versus a kennel.
Well, I understand that, but let's say when we get to that magical site plan and they say, hey, this is, you know what, this is the way animal hospitals are trending, we found this, studies have shown it's great to have a recreational yard at our animal hospital because we really got to rehabilitate Rex and make it right. And so the animal hospital wins and Pet Suite loses because they're two different functions. I understand that, but really I don't know what we're trying to, what we're trying to say no to with Pet Suites, I guess is what I'm getting at. Is it because because a dog's going to bark when I drive by on Crossroads, or because it's the wall, or because it's a yard? I'm saying I could build an animal hospital to look an awful lot like Pet Suites and it's going to be okay. But I'm trying to understand what we're trying to get away from and why. And do we have the sufficient grounds to stand on as a city to say this, yes, that, no? That's what really bothers me about all of this. And I get that we are trying to shape our overlay, or this overlay and these interests into our city. But if I look at Google Maps, I just pulled it up tonight, like I'm driving by McDonald's and Wendy's and Taco Bell on this road already. Like the ship has sailed. We should have had this discussion 15 years ago, if we're honest with ourselves. And that doesn't preclude us from now taking some control of what's left and piecing together a beautiful city, which we are all desperately and you all work tirelessly to do. But I have a really, really hard time at some point. I just feel like we could do more, give more notice, and kind of draw a clearer line to say no more. And I get that's what we're trying to do right now. I just feel like there was more we could have done. And I think that's it, Mr. Chair. So thank you for letting me speak for a minute.
Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Ryan. We have Commissioner Kilgore next. Unfortunately, I've closed public comment, so I can't take any more. Commissioner Kilgore.
When, I can't remember when it was, a few planning commissions ago, one of the options that was presented by staff to the planning commission in order to work with some of the existing property owners and some of the businesses that were coming in was possibly to delay adoption of the code, of the overlay zone, in order to allow for certain property owners or applicants to submit a site plan just under the wire. And I'm wondering, is there some kind of a deadline that the city council expects the gateway overlay to be finished by? Clearly they want to get this done. We want to get this done because I'm all for the gateway overlay. I believe in that kind of a control over our boundaries. But at the same time, it's really hard to understand sometimes. We've asked for this actually. What the city council is envisioning in terms of visual look to the gateway, and not having that. I feel like we have to acknowledge that although overall it's a great idea and we want to do this, that there are certain folks who are impacted by it just because of timing. So if there's no particular deadline that we have to hit by in order to just to get certain things done, then why can't we, based on some recommendations or some suggestions that were made previously about delaying it to the point where we can at least get one or two who have invested a lot in these areas under the wire. That way we don't have to worry about, the questions are good. As to why there's a demarcation between concept plan and site plan, but that's already in the code. We'd have to actually change code in order to make any difference to the folks who are coming in. This way, I know we don't like exceptions necessarily, but this is one of those reasons why maybe there ought to be a particular exception in this case, and then going forward, we could make real the vision that the city council has. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a push or a certain date that we need to have everything done by.
So as you remember, we have already adopted the gateway overlay map. We don't have anything to govern that by. So we have this map that says, hey, this is our gateway, but we don't have any restrictions within that gateway. So this is what follows that. And so it isn't necessarily that you have a deadline. It is more so as a request from the council to get this done. So, and I don't recall, sorry, I don't recall that there was an option to delays in order, I don't recall. Maybe there was, and Sarah would have that
Yeah, I mean, it was
answered
one of
better.
the options that was discussed. as
Okay.
to, you know, do we put off adopting the gateway overlay just a few weeks in order to allow for certain applicants to get their site plan in time? So that was something that was considered, but
Was that? Okay.
we didn't obviously do that because we did recommend, approval. And by the way, as far as Pet Suites is concerned, we didn't approve because we don't have approving authority, but we did recommend that, an exception be made. And as far as I'm concerned, I haven't really changed from that position as well. And so, I don't know, I just feel like if there isn't what is the consequence of tabling this?
I think our city attorney has
Yes.
some comments.
Yeah, so if you recall, this is actually already a pending ordinance, so it's already gone to the council, and they passed a resolution approving changes to the gateway, to the gateway code. And it's now come back before the commission. You reviewed it once, I think, in December, and then we continued that hearing to this month here in January to this meeting. And so this is the next opportunity for the planning commission to weigh in on this. But it's a pending ordinance already. The city council has already passed a resolution approving not these exact changes, but changes. And some of those were redlined in your packets that you had and that you saw. And so the changes tonight were the things that are new that you hadn't seen before is that change in the definition. It's delineating some of the different uses, separating out general tobacco from the specialty tobacco and adding cannabis dispensary and things like this. And then the site plan changes are what are new tonight that you hadn't seen already. So I would just say that it has been a length of time that individuals or parties have had an opportunity to submit plans, including site plans.
Yeah, and it was, it was approved by the city council on November 1st.
So that's the overlay.
Yeah, that was the
Restrictions
overlay.
were approved at that time?
On December 6th, while discussing the possible locations for applying the overlay, the council suggested that other uses, including commercial kennels, also be listed as a prohibited use in the overlay areas.
Right, so that part has not been approved yet.
No, that's what we're looking at today.
Right.
So these came back now, and then on January 3rd, the council did the pending ordinance. However, it was back, November that the resolution was signed, I think, on January 3rd, the city council, first city council meeting. And then it's just back here in front of you.
Yeah, so that's why I thought the restriction or prohibiting kennels, kennels has not been approved yet, that prohibition.
Right.
Yeah, so that's why I thought is there something that can be done in order to allow for that? The reason why I believe the applicant wasn't able to submit a site plan currently is because they have to look at another property, since the initial property was not suitable. And that's what the delay has been. And playing around with code for a particular applicant, that's not a good idea necessarily, but this is one where we as a commission did consider it before and had recommended it. Now, true, it's been denied or disapproved by city council, but I still feel the same way again about this one particular situation. And again, although I totally agree with a gateway overlay and control over those boundaries, again, real lives are, affected by it. The particular type of business, yes, welcome in the city. And I understand that there's certain places where we want certain, maybe certain businesses. But again, real lives are really affected by this. And I feel like in good faith, the applicant has tried to keep up with the city ordinances. Unfortunately, there's been some setbacks just because of, the parking didn't work out and such. But I don't know. I just feel that I'd like to just keep with what I thought was the right thing to do. And maybe going forward, other pet kennels may not be, approved. But again, for this one, just because we're right on that transition, there's no real particular driving, well, there is a driving need, but not a particular deadline, then, what's the difference if it's another 2 weeks? This is actually to the Planning Commission as well. Those are my thoughts. I don't know what everyone else thinks. But anyway, that's where I stand.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. We have Commissioner Barton and then Commissioner Burns.
I just am really on the same side as Commissioner Ray and Commissioner Kilgore, where I'm having a hard time with it. Not allowing, I hate the word kennel because I feel like it has this bad sound to it, right? And I don't feel like Pet Suites is a kennel like you think about it in any which way. And I'm just having a hard time because I feel like it's almost like personal opinion what we're allowing, kind of. I know it's not. I know there's some reasoning behind it, like we don't want outside storage and stuff like that. But and that's what the city council is here for, and that's what we're here for, that kind of stuff, is because hopefully we're listening to our patrons and stuff like that. But I'm with you guys. I'm having a hard time. I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself because it's going to be the same thing that you guys had said. But I just to say that I agree with. I'm having a hard time being like, nope, we're done. This is out. Pet Suites can't come in because of it. It's our overlay, and we're not allowing that. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
Thank you, Commissioner Barton. Commissioner Burns.
Yeah, I have some questions about the original concept plan that was submitted for Pet Suite. Was the parking issues originally known when that, and then how soon was that responded to? Can you walk me through that process a little bit?
Yeah, so when the applicant or business owner was calling to see if they could put a Pet Suites in this location, it fell under the commercial kennel use. Going to that definition, going to the parking, all of those things were answered in email, phone calls, meetings with the applicant prior to. And then a code amendment was made to our parking ordinance to allow for less parking because the kennel required quite a few. It was so many, I can't remember exactly what it was. So that ordinance had to go through. And in order for them to even...
Sorry, so when they originally started working with the city, they were aware that the property and the building and the parking wouldn't work, and that they were entering into this, purchasing the land and working with the city with the knowledge that that parking wouldn't work.
I don't know the specifics exactly. I don't know when the purchase was made. I don't know that timeline exactly. I wasn't the planner working on that. However, that ordinance was requested to be changed for them to get that type of use allowed.
And then my understanding is that additional property was purchased for parking so that their site plan would work.
That I don't know.
And then now the overlay. So
We have a comment from our attorney.
The same thing she said. Sorry, I keep doing that. I keep wanting to help answer the question, but they did ask for a code amendment, so they felt the code, that what they were wanting was not in compliance with the code. So they did come and ask for a code amendment.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to words. My head hurts. Just kind of understand, like, so they bought this property knowing that it wouldn't work and that the parking wouldn't work, or if they, and hoping to be able to go in and get some changes, or if they didn't know that wouldn't work from the get-go. And I think that to me makes a difference in where we're at right now.
Assume that. No one here has said that
Yeah.
they knew that it wasn't going to work. You're just making an assumption there.
Yeah, well, I was trying to ask the question
Right,
about
and
it,
no
not
one
make an
knows.
assumption. Yeah, so I'm just saying, to me, in my mind, whether, when they entered that agreement, it makes a difference to me if they knew going in already that the parking wasn't there, or if they didn't know.
So we don't know.
Yeah, so, yeah, this is a hard one. I don't know, y'all.
Can I make a comment? So when someone buys a property, we have the city ordinance in place, and so they know what they have the responsibility to do their due diligence and know what's in our ordinance, and they have to figure out whether or not they can fit what they need to do on that piece of property. And so our ordinance is in place. When you buy a piece of property, you have to figure out whether or not you can meet that ordinance.
How often does an applicant come in? How often has it happened in Saratoga? They know the ordinance, but they come in and ask for something different.
We get those calls all the
time, right? Yeah, that's
on
right.
a daily basis.
No matter what, okay.
So they did call our office.
So it happens
and-
all the time, right?
Right.
Okay.
And that's where it got to as far as the parking, that they requested that ordinance to be changed so that their use could fit in that
Right.
without
And-
having to have that much parking. Now, does that vest them? I don't know that it necessarily does, because it doesn't follow our code as far as a concept plan, site
Exactly.
plan, and
Which
so
I
forth.
understand, yeah. Okay. I just was wondering if it happened more often. I'm assuming that it happened.
Right, and that's,
I want to point out that they could ask for a code change even if they, just to answer a little bit your question, even if it would have worked for them to have the code as it was, they could still ask for a code change just because they wanted to ask for a code change or something different. I assume that's probably what they're wanting to say. And so I just wanted to point that out, that we can't make an assumption about why they asked for a code change. You can't assume that it wouldn't have worked because they asked for a code change. That would be an unfair assumption to make.
yeah, and I'm sure the planner that was working on this could give you a precise timeline and put that together for you as far as what happened and how that panned out. So I think, but this, here we are at this point, how that plays out is up to you.
So Commissioner McConkey, and then I'm going to make my comments. We're going to see about moving on to the other part of this.
I just want to refocus this here a little bit. There's reasons here and there. We don't know the intents behind purchases, and it's things are risky in investing. They are. You do the best you can when you have something you need to achieve, and there's processes in place, and sometimes it works great, sometimes not so well. But I want to get away from that and just refocus here that tonight's question isn't just about one possible business being located in overlay zone, but what we're voting on and recommending or not recommending is, are these the uses that we feel are appropriate for the overlay zone? And if there's some,
It is though, because if we think it's okay to put a kennel there, then we'd be voting differently. So it is
Correct.
it is about the discussion.
but it shouldn't be about one specific kennel. If we feel like the overlay zone, if we feel a kennel is appropriate for an overlay zone, then that would be something that we should be considering. Whereas if we don't, and really, so in the future, certainly there's some changes. If something changes, and we and the city council and we get some public input and so forth, and we feel like, well, these uses that have been exempted really probably should not have been exempted, and there's some great reasons, we certainly can make some adjustments that way as well. But I just want to get away from the micro-focusing of just focusing on one business and looking at the overall picture as to whether or not is in our staff packet we feel appropriate.
Okay, so Commissioner Ryan rang in, but I'm going to just talk first, then I'll let him talk, and then we'll move on to the next part of this. My big thing on this has been something Commissioner Ryan said when we first started discussing this. We're picking winners and losers into this zone. And I agree that we probably need to have a place so you can tell where Saratoga Springs starts and where the other cities around us start or end, however you want to put that. I think about what happens when we're going down State Street into Pleasant Grove, Linden, Orem, Provo. You can't tell where one stop starts and the next one ends. And so I, in theory, agree with this. However, to me, throwing these up here, even though some of them I agree with probably shouldn't be necessarily the first thing you see when you come into Saratoga Springs, I think a lot of it's arbitrary. And I don't think Saratoga Springs, I know since the time I've been on the commission, there's been comments that, hey, we're anti-business. We don't want business here. And this to me is saying, hey, we want your business here, but don't put it as the first thing that comes into the city. I think with architectural rules and rules about landscaping, where they're going to put the parking, we could put anything in these places and still have them look nice. So for me, what I would like when this item comes up, I want this split off as a separate motion because I'm going to vote against it. Just because in principle, I don't think we should be saying, hey, you can't have this here. We already have zoning that we have, but put whatever you want there. Let's just make sure it looks nice. The parking lot's not to the front or whatever. So I'll go ahead and let Commissioner Ryan talk and then let's decide what the other items we want to discuss. Go ahead, Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't necessarily want to belabor the point. And what you just said was very well said. And I'm not just saying that just because we reelected you for 2 more years and I want to be in your good graces, but well said regardless. In my mind is racing. I'm trying to think what makes cities memorable. And I think of some of the most famous cities around the world in the country, whether by accident or by design, the things that make the cities memorable are what is at its heart. And again, unfortunately, I feel some of that ship has sailed around when we come into our city. That's not necessarily what I view as the heart of the city, because we already do have the automobile repair shops. We already have Timp Rental. We already have storage centers. We have all these things that just have happened over the course of time. And it's not to say throw our hands up, we're done. But what we don't have is the heartbeat of our city. And it's coming, and it's going to be awesome. And that's the thing that we can really still, at this point, as this commission, have some say over and really try to make it special and really have the thing that makes us memorable. And I'm not sure whether or not a kennel on the outskirts of town as you come in is there or not is the thing that my kids will remember. But they will remember if we are able to successfully create a downtown place for them to gather with their families and for grandma and grandpa someday to take them those places. And I'm waxing a little sentimental, and I understand that. But to me, I feel like, to Commissioner McConkey's point, we have got caught up a little bit here in the micro part of it. But I have such a hard time. If I drive by ABC Daycare down Redwood Road, and I look at their brick building, and I look at their little yard, and I look at the pictures that have been proposed to us, and again, just pictures, just a concept of what pet suites look like across the nation, man, I'd have a hard time knowing if those are kids running out there in the yard or dogs. And that's not to, it's not to equate the two. Although I lived on the East Coast for a long time, and a lot of people treat their pets like their children. And I'm not trying to, again, say that our kids are dogs. Like, don't put that in the minutes. But I just don't know what we're trying to get after with some of these things. Like, what is it at the heart? Like, let's just put our cards on the table. If we just want to say, kennels be damned, like, let's say that and be honest about it. Because what I'm looking at is like, again, I would have a hard time if I'm just cruising by at 45 miles an hour to know if that's a pet suites or if that's an ABC child daycare. And so it's hard for me to say you can't, but you can. And so I agree, Mr. Chair, with what you have mentioned. I know these are very rough analogies that I've put forward, but I'm just trying to draw distinctions, really try to get at what we're trying to accomplish. I do feel moving forward, gateway overlay is a great option. We should use it as a tool. But I think there are other tools available to us, like for a kennel, for example, going back out to the macro argument as a permitted use, that we can have the right tools available to us to control what those would look like moving forward by design standards or otherwise when we get to those points. So I belabored it. I promised I wouldn't, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Question, just when it comes to like our patrons. So when I think about stuff like this, sometimes I'm like, okay, if I told the people around me, and we're a big pet family, if they'd rather have a general overlay, if they'd rather have a pet daycare, I bet they'd say pet daycare right now. Because pets are very popular. I mean, they are treated like part of the family. And especially in that area where we're talking about, it already has all these other things in there. So I just feel like when I think about if I went out and asked my neighbors and everybody around here, like, oh wait, do we have to choose between having nicer buildings on this side, as we come in, compared to having some place to take our pets during the day? I think they choose the doggy daycare. And that's just my thinking. Again, we're pet people, and actually most of the people I know are pet people, but I guess I have to look a little bit on that side of it as well, just because we're representing them.
Commissioner Kilgore. Thank you, Commissioner Barton.
So I wanted clarification on what Commissioner Cunningham just said about separating it out. So I'm just wondering, what's the practical way of moving forward? I mean, we've got other things that we still want to talk about, but I'm wondering, just because of what we have on hand here, and it's generating much of the conversation, although Commissioner Ryan, talked about it in generally, and I agree with what you're saying, but at the same time, for practical purposes, is it better to separate it out and then just vote against it? Because I'm, again, for the gateway and having certain restrictions. Or should we just say, okay, make a condition to exempt or to remove animal kennels from the prohibited list? I wonder if that's a more practical way. I don't know. That's what you meant.
Well, for me, it's not just the kennel thing. It's the whole arbitrary listing of stuff on that amendment. So what I was hoping, when we make a motion, that the portion for the gateway overlay use be a separate motion from the other items, the redefinition of the tobacco stores and the site plan approvals. That's what I was.
Because I think, practically speaking, City Council will approve a prohibition list. Not to say that we have to just go along with that, but the idea is that it's still a positive thing, I think, for most of the members of the commission. And so maybe if we, at least again, taking care of this one particular aspect, because we don't have a lot of other businesses here, especially multiple times and within multiple media, talking about their case. And so if that's the case, then maybe that's the one thing that we take care of, just because of of that. And then also in general, I have lived on 3 different continents in multiple cities, and lived and worked. And I have to say that, okay, so this is, it's so out there that maybe it's not relevant, but I lived in Germany, and I used to go to Salzburg, every weekend I could go. And there are several ways to get there, and one way is a very scenic way where it's a lot of the old town and another way is through the industrial section. And as if I had friends or visitors, I would always take them, go out of my way to go through the scenic way to get to Salzburg. And so what kind of businesses you have and what kind of appearance visually, I didn't know what those businesses were, but just visually, it does make a difference, in how you remember the city. Because if you just go through the industrial way, it's just something that you don't want you don't want your friends to see when you're talking about how great the city is, and then that's the first thing they see. So it really does make a difference. But again, I don't know what those old buildings, what they did. I don't know what kind of business they had. They just look visually really nice. So I think doing that is an important thing, and that's why I don't want to just simply, not, at least as a commission, make a recommendation. But again, real lives are affected, and those cities, those attractive cities, had centuries of figuring out what kind of things should go there and not go there. And so I just feel like at this point, let's look at who is in front of us, who has made the biggest case, and just try to deal with it, at least as far as a recommendation is concerned.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Commissioner McConkey.
If I can be honest, I feel like this needs some more discussion with the city council, with the staff, and really get into the core of what, and maybe work more backwards on these overlay zones. What are we trying to achieve? And what's the nitty-gritty? What's the core? Is it about what businesses are in there? Or is it about the architecture like you discussed? Or what exactly can we put our finger on that we're trying to achieve and then work from there? And I feel like if we do that, a lot of this might take care of itself. And some of these uses that are being proposed to be exempted from the overlay zone may end up being back in there. I may or may not like the businesses or want them there, but there may be nothing that would prohibit because the goal is being achieved. So it's a little bit, I'm slightly uneasy with making a firm internal motion without really getting down to the core, because obviously this is going to affect landowners, investors, not just these people here, but others as well. And we're talking about something that's going to hopefully be around for the next 50 years.
Thank you, Commissioner McConkey. And Commissioner Ryan.
I'm going to be very, very quick, Mr. Chair. So we have pros in the room. They're seated here in front of me. Are there any other tools available for planning purposes to accomplish what I believe we're trying to accomplish here outside of gateway overlays?
Absolutely. So if you think back to our conditional use permit process, we removed our conditional use permits, which has been great because what we did was we took those standards and we applied them as asterisks or footnotes saying, if you're going to choose to put this business within this zone, then you need to do X, Y, and Z. That's what you would potentially do in this situation, is you would say, okay, well, a bar would be appropriate, we'll allow a bar, this hypothetical example, so long as architecture is done at a certain standard, parking is, behind or hidden from view, or there's certain things that you can do in order to allow certain businesses in your gateway. And maybe that's where you go, or you can add that to the gateway overlay zone, saying in the gateway overlay zone, we want this type of architecture, or this, we want parking to be here, or we want certain things, attributes that we see, amenities or something similar to what we do with our shoreline.
So Gina, do you feel like, and maybe you haven't participated, maybe it's been others, and maybe it's on us to do some more homework or listen to old audio files, but the discussion at the city council level, is it more towards what we're talking about there, like we want a certain wow factor, pizzazz, or is it that we really and ultimately don't want this type of business here? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
In that spot, do you get a sense one way or another where the discussions of the city council or both have come down?
Fred, do you want to answer that?
It seems to me that they are concerned about aesthetics, as we've talked about coming into the city, and that they're just saying, if you recall, it started out with a pretty small list of prohibited uses, and it's kind of expanded. So I think that's really what's happened. And I don't know if that answers your questions, but I think that it's more that.
Well, and I appreciate that, both of you, in providing context and background, just because I just want to, again, get to the heart of what's really driving this, and I think that's been part of the comments as well. And if it is aesthetics, if it is we want a certain design standards, we want the pizzazz, the wow factor, we want the memorable experience when we bring folks into the city. Again, that was my question. Well, can we get to that via another means and just absolve ourselves of this conundrum that sort of presented itself via this route? And I understand why it's come this route because of some decisions that we've made. So again, my own lack of personal experience, my own lack in just being a citizen volunteer, but helping me to understand, well, hey, are there other tools? Often
Mm-hmm.
in negotiation, you can think outside the box, right? And think, hey, what are we missing? And so
And
that's just,
there are other tools. When we sat down to do this, I know we looked at, as planners, we try to look at each use objectively and think of the worst case scenario. So when we're looking at light manufacturing, cannabis production establishments, even kennels, my previous jurisdiction was Morgan County, and I don't think you want a Morgan County kennel at the Gateway. And it's a different type of kennel because it is a rural community. So you have different types of, in that use, it can be, and if we allow that kennel to be in a Gateway, we do have to put very fine details in what they can and cannot do, because our definition does not define the aesthetics of a kennel in the Gateway. So, your architecture, that it has to be all indoors. Some kennels are not all indoors. The ones in Morgan aren't. And so, that's how we looked at a recycling facility building. Let's take the north part of the city. We have office warehouse. We've had lots of discussions on the property across from Northern Frontier Business Park with the big, huge building that we potentially had coming into our city. That was a concept. That was similar to what these folks are dealing with. That was the same scenario. And if you remember, that was not what we wanted at the gateway of our city, because it was a large, large scale. So that's how we're looking at these. We're looking at other cities. We're looking at what other cities have and have, worked for them and what hasn't. We look at, planning definitions of these type of uses. So we're looking at all of those different things. Is this what we really want within our city in that gateway area? I will say in Tooele City, that's where I live, and I've sat in a meeting talking exactly about outdoor or storage units within the gateway of Tooele City. And the property owner was adamant about putting that on there. He had invested a lot of time and energy. They ended up allowing him to do it, but they had to do architectural things to where it didn't look like a storage unit. So, because it was in their gateway. So that you want to protect your gateways. You don't want a car lot sitting in the gateway of your community. Look at Sandy. Sandy's a good example of that. They've got the auto mall right there. Those are the type of things that we looked at as staff, and I believe that's what the council's looking at as well. So it's the intensity of those uses, the potential intensity of those uses. We can't define a commercial kennel to be exactly like Pet Suites. Right. We have to define it in a general sense. If we don't, then, if we can't be so subjective to just one type of business. We have to encapsulate all of it.
I appreciate the background. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Barton.
Just a quick question. So I guess that's my question, and it's kind of the same way, is instead of saying we won't allow these, why don't we put some things into place saying they have to look nice? So how come we can't go that route?
There's more detail. If you think back to architectural design standards, it's not that we can't do it, we can. And we're more than happy to go to work and do that. You can't just say it looks nice. You have to have certain details.
Right, well, that's why I'm wondering why we can't do it that way instead.
We can
Because for me,
definitely
like a
back-
bar, I'm like, why wouldn't we want a bar on the edge of our city? It's a great place to have one. And I know some people, when they think of bar, they think of some honky-tonk rundown place, but the new bars, they don't look like that. They look great. Redemption on the way to Harriman, I don't know if anybody's driven past that. It's a nice looking building right there. It really is.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it that way, then I'm like, I think a bar would be fine in that area, right? And so I think we're all kind of on the same page, almost, right? Like, why can't we make it, hey, this is what we're required to have you build there, but I'm having a hard time having all the uses. Yeah, anyway.
Our city attorney want to make a
I
comment?
just want to point out that the Gateway Zone does have architectural standards now and other standards that have been added. if you recall, we added like mixed waterfront / gateway, and then we added some of those things, so.
Okay, we haven't spent much time with the retail tobacco specialty definition, so right now, anybody have any comments or questions about that? And then the other thing was on the changes to the site plan approval process. Any questions or comments about that one? Commissioner McConkey.
So the proposal is to limit the commission's legislative authority to, say, 2 and 3 family site plans and new and major amendments, correct?
Right, so all non-residential site plans and major amendments and all gateway overlay site plans are what the council is requesting to come to them.
Right. So what problems were caused by this current status?
Not necessarily problems. The council wanted, from the meeting that I sat in, the council wanted, they're the ones making the final decision on a rezone for particular commercial sites. And they want to, they have it presented to them in a concept at a rezone, and then they don't see it again because it goes to Planning Commission for their site plan. And so they want to see, for example, let's use Holiday Oil, for example. So Holiday Oil was I can't use that as an example because that's in a community plan. But say it went to, you will actually see a Holiday Oil come in front of you. And that zone was presented to the council saying, hey, we're going to put this use here on this property that we're asking you to rezone to regional commercial, but yet then they don't see it because the site plan ends at the Planning Commission. They just want a little bit more oversight on what they're saying. They say, hey, we allowed this to come in here, but yet then they don't see it again. And they just want to have a little bit more discretion on that.
Okay.
It's not that you're making any decisions.
Okay, well, that answers my question. I'm certainly not a fan of giving, if they've voted in the past to give legislative
Right.
authority to the Planning Commission, I think that's a great privilege and honor to us, and I'm not quick to give that back, so to speak, because that certainly is an opportunity for us to exercise our ability as well.
It's not that you have done a poor job.
I was just wondering if there are some examples there.
No. And I understand that you may feel that way, but I don't believe that is the reason that they're asking for it, is they see these things coming in and they're like, wait,
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I can't say it's convincing, but it makes perfect sense.
You guys do a really good job. Don't second guess yourself.
I would also point out that you will continue to see site plans and make a recommendation to the council.
Sure.
You just won't be the final land use authority on
commercial
these ones, non-residential site plans.
Yeah, thanks. I'm still not feeling warm fuzzies, but that's all I have to say about that.
Yeah.
I think.
Okay, we covered those areas. Commissioner Kilgore, go ahead.
These things kind of change because I don't think there's like a state mandate as to what we do. And so before we didn't have it either, and then we did, for a while, and then it just goes back. So I think sometimes it could be just a lot of work, and the city council just says, okay, we'll have the planning commission do this, be the land use authority. And so I'm not really too concerned. I think it ebbs and flows, just based on the workload and the mentality of the particular city council at that time. So
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Commissioner Barton.
I'm just wondering how other cities do it. Does anybody know? Like, is it?
It varies across the state.
And it depends
So,
kind of
yeah.
what Ken was saying, kind of the same thing.
In Morgan County, the county council saw everything. They saw concept plans to site plans.
So it just depends on how the city, okay, thanks.
How the jurisdiction wants to
do it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've kind of come to the end of our discussion. I'm not sure how we're going to do the whole motion thing. All right.
So I was going to comment on that. You can, so you've got, on the agenda, you have the gateway overlay uses, use amendment. So I would count that as one. And then I would break out the car wash from residential zones as two, and then your site plan approval process. So I would recommend doing 3 different motions for this particular item. Because if it comes back to you, they can, instead of bringing it back to you as a whole, they can be one thing.
Or two.
Oh, yeah.
Or two. You could combine.
Separate the one item.
You could combine, yeah.
You can.
Okay.
We failed to ask if anybody had any car wash concerns or questions. If not, okay, well, then I will go ahead and cross our fingers and ask for a motion.
On what?
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
On anything?
Yeah, any motion that decides to come forward, decides to be presented.
So I'll make a motion, but I don't want to make a motion about the overlays.
So make the other one, and then we'll go to that one next.
We can at least get that far.
So maybe what I can make a motion that I move that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for approval of the amendments that I am about to mention. Actually, for the proposed amendments to the car wash spacing. Boy, okay, I'm going to scratch that. You know what I want to make a motion on? I want to make a motion, move that the Planning Commission forward a negative recommendation to the proposed amendment to the site plan approval process with the, yeah, I think that's the end of my motion.
Okay, I'm going to deem that motion fails due to a lack of a second. So do we have another motion or a substitute motion for that one?
I'll make a motion. I move that the Planning Commission sends a positive recommendation, is that how you'd say it? For the amendments to Title 19 Land Development Code of the City of Saratoga Springs, chapters, just a minute. That I move that the Planning Commission forwards a positive recommendation for the car wash spacing for residential zones and the site plan approval process.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the site plan approval process and the car wash spacing from residential zone from Commissioner Barton and a second from Commissioner Wilden. Do we have a question on the motion?
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the motion. Could we just possibly add in the changes in the definition of the retail tobacco specialty business?
Yes.
Motion as well? Could I amend it?
Yes. The second.
That was me too.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to restate the entire, read, okay.
So I'd like to amend Commissioner Barton's motion to add the changes to the 190202-265 retail tobacco specialty business, to include that in her motion.
So we have change the motion from Commissioner Ryan. We have the motion that came from Commissioner Barton, and the second was Commissioner Kilgore or Commissioner Wilden. Are you guys okay with the changes? Are you okay with the change?
Your original motion didn't include the uses. The tobacco.
Didn't include the tobacco.
Yes.
Not the uses.
No.
The definition.
Tobacco.
The tobacco definition.
The one definition.
Sorry, we're not doing you any favors tonight, Nikki.
No.
Okay, so all in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Do we have one nay, is that right? Do you want to take a minute and explain?
I get warm fuzzies reviewing those and approving those site plans.
Okay.
That's something I find very rewarding, to be honest. That's not about the warm fuzzies, but it's something that I take seriously. So it's a legislative opportunity that will not be there. Yes, recommendations is nice and all, but it's nice to have some legislative authority as well.
All right. So we have the gateway overlay left. I'll entertain a motion for that.
I'll make a motion. Sorry if nobody else wants to. I move that the planning commission sends a negative, now I can't think of the wording,
Negative
a
recommendation.
negative recommendation for the gateway overlay use amendments.
We have a motion from Commissioner Barton. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And we have a second from Commissioner Ryan. Any question on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say nay. Will that pass, the negative recommendation passes unanimously?
I didn't vote,
Oh.
just by the way. I don't know if, I don't have to, right?
You can abstain.
I abstain.
Okay, so we have 6 positive votes and 1 abstain from that one. Okay, I need to take a break. So let's take like 5 minutes or so, and then we'll tackle the last item.
So then the reason.
Okay, we're back. We're going to move on to item number 7, business item, Utah Lake Estates, Plat B, preliminary plat, 2 lots located at 3434 South Spinnaker Drive. Bree Beckstead is applicant, and this is presented by Austin. And what's your last name, Austin? Sorry.
Why?
Roy? Okay.
Yes. Okay, so yeah, this is on so it's 2 lots. It's on, first lot is 0.32 acres, second lot is 0.38 acres. This is in the R110 zone. So Utah Lake Estates is a recorded 11-lot subdivision. When it initially came in, so when they were doing concept and preliminary, they proposed 12 lots. At the last minute, the owner of lots 7 and 8 decided they wanted to combine those 2 lots into 1 lot, and so the final plat that got recorded had 11 lots. Since then, the owner of that lot has changed their mind. They actually do want 2 lots now. So this is the location here. This is kind of down in the south end. It's on 3434 Spinnaker Drive. There's a parcel number there. You can see here, this is the existing recorded plat, 11 lots. What we're looking at is splitting lot 11 into 2 lots again. And so that's the plat. There's a couple of minor red lines that need to be corrected on there, but other than that, staff doesn't see, everything else meets our code. We have a recommendation here for positive recommendation. These are the findings and conditions for a positive recommendation. Does the Planning Commission have any questions?
Yeah, well, I'll open this up for questions and comments from the commission. Commissioner Kilgore?
Is the applicant here?
They were unable to be here tonight, and so I just told them I'd introduce it and let them know the results.
Okay.
They wanted to be here, but they unfortunately had a time scheduled out of town that they scheduled a long time ago and weren't able to rework around that. So,
Well, since this is a administrative action, I usually ask this question of the applicant, and I don't want you to put words into the applicant's mouth, but based on you having worked with the applicant, is the applicant willing to abide by the conditions and the conditions in the staff report?
yes, from what in my conversations with them, I believe that they would be willing to accept the conditions that we have outlined in the report.
Okay, terrific. That's actually all I had.
Thank you, Commissioner Kilgore. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to make a motion if appropriate.
Yes, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the Utah Lake Estates Plat B preliminary plat located at 3434 South Spinnaker Drive based on the findings and conditions in the staff report and as presented this evening.
I'll second that.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ryan and a second from Commissioner McConkey. Do we have a question on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. That passes. All right, the next item is approval of minutes from December 1st and December 22nd. Can we do that as a single motion, or does it have to be 2 motions? Single motion work?
I actually wanted to ask about the first set of minutes. Is the date correct?
He corrected it.
Oh, that was amended in your packet?
Okay, then I must not have gotten that.
Yeah,
The first one was January.
yeah.
Said January, they corrected it.
Okay, sorry, I didn't get the amendment because my email isn't working. Okay, then that's it.
So approval of minutes, is it for December 1st? Is that when we had our meeting? Yes. Okay, and December 22nd? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
So Commissioner Ryan, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from December 1st, 2022 and December 22nd, 2022 as presented in the packet.
And I second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Ryan and a second from Commissioner Kilgore to approve the minutes. I have a question on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right. Reports of action. Do we have any reports of action for tonight? Any commission comments?
Welcome, Doug.
Commissioner Wilden, we're excited to have you.
Great to be here, and I'm glad I was able to say one word. I'll say more next time.
Okay.
I had a thought that occurred to me is here at the end, you know, and I'm not trying to be negative. I just find it a little humorous in the current pain that we're about to feel from this legislative session. Is the city council is in a way doing the same thing that the state's about to do to us, removing legislative
All
authority.
rolls downhill.
Yeah, right. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Anyway,
I actually did have a more, am I okay? Sorry, is that it?
Yes.
you're good.
So a lot, I don't know if you all have been briefed by like the Utah League of Cities and Towns, if there's been discussions about what's coming down the pipe, but I feel like some of it, at least, we're a little bit ahead of the game, in my opinion, in terms of like low to moderate income housing plans, some of those things we've already discussed. So I would just love to have general sense from staff, whether you feel like we're prepared. I think there's still going to be some really interesting things, but, and yeah, had some interesting quotes that I heard today as well at the Economic and Policy Summit, but otherwise, you feel like the city's positioned well?
Yeah, in fact, our moderate income housing implementation part of our general plan, it was a city-initiated ordinance, and it was passed at council last time. And so, yeah, I think we're ahead of the game, although we're going to still have challenges with some of the other things down the pike. But anything dealing with our water, Saratoga is one of the leading cities in the state
Yeah,
as
we're already
far as
way
water
ahead on.
conservation. And, yeah, we'll see how it goes. It's always going to be an interesting feat.
Yeah, it just seems funny that, you know, the state passes ordinances in order to try to promote moderate housing, and then some cities abide and maybe go a little bit beyond, and then many cities don't. And rather than punishing or creating, maybe punishing is not the right word, but in order to create more incentive or to have those cities held up to what the state wanted, they just say, okay, we're just going to take it away from everybody, and we're just going to decide, as opposed to holding those cities accountable who didn't. And it just seems very heavy-handed.
There is an additional proposal that will hold cities more accountable.
Right.
That is coming. So part of it was like, let's say Orem City doesn't abide by it. Well, because Orem City doesn't abide by it, it affects Linden, it affects Provo, like on their infrastructure, their transportation. So the legislature will take more targeted action that will hold cities. So I think it's both, which I don't know, is that the best thing? I don't know, but that's where we're
It's
headed.
just withholding funding
Yeah.
is the,
Yeah, jurisdictions don't like that. I know there's some that are not wanting to, you know, they don't want the low-income housing. But, you know, it's difficult. I mean, we struggle with providing low-income housing, you know, with Prop 6. And, you know, where do we put that? We do have some options, and that was spelled out in the report that was required by the state. So some of those restrictions are going to come down. I don't know if they'll continue to break our backs over it. I think they will, because it's becoming an issue in Utah as far as providing, you know, low-income housing, affordable housing for residents.
but that's mainly market-driven.
It is
And
market-driven.
it's a difficult problem to
Yeah.
solve when the market's the one that
It is.
determines what's
Even
affordable.
Salt Lake City struggles with it. You
Yeah.
know, they put in affordable housing, and they've done some great things in Salt Lake, but some of their affordable housing isn't affordable. And it is.
The average
very-
consumer, yeah.
Right, because they're changing these these big warehouses into apartments that are lofts, and those are a trend right now. And so, you know, they struggle the same as anywhere else, but they have put some incentives in place for affordable housing and for their homeless population. So we as a city we don't have that problem as far as having homeless people or the homeless population here within our city. Now, does that mean it's not going to come? Eventually it will, but right now I think we have a good plan in place. We did a really good job as far as looking in our general plan at that possibility. So.
It just seems that one of the problems is that the definition for affordable housing is based on each city's income level. And so like Alpine, let's just say if Alpine's average income level is say like $500,000, then affordable housing is $500,000, whereas in Saratoga Springs. If it's $350,000, then it's $350,000 here. So people just tend to go to the places with the cheaper housing where the income is, where the average income for that city is low. There should be a standard all the way across the board for the state. And that way, everybody is required to have that, including Alpine. But right now, they don't have to because their income, is just on average, it just happens to be high.
I don't necessarily agree with how the state has their moderate income housing act written. I think that's what they're trying to address with the modifications that they're making and the bills that they were put before. Will it address the problem? I don't know. I don't think it will. I don't think, you're right. It's based off of the moderate or the median income. And it's, there are some more wealthier cities than it is than others. And where's that population? Whereas, we want to be able to apply that across the board, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. It's what I think the legislature really struggles with.
I will, I'll send you guys a link to go and sign up on the league's site for their updates, legislative updates. I used to get them really regularly on my city email, but it's like stopped. I don't know what's happened. I haven't seen anything. But I did sign up for it from my personal email. Hopefully it will keep coming through, but go do that because they do cover a lot of good stuff with what the legislature is doing with cities. And so that's kind of where I keep track of what's going on. Director's report, do we have anything?
Just the city council, they did go over the DA was approved, I believe it was approved for Riverwalk, the rezone for that, and then the moderate income housing, and then what we had talked about previously as far as the overlay, the gateway overlay applications zoning map amendment, and that was approved. That ordinance was approved, and then the resolution for a pending ordinance on not only the overlay, but also the car wash spacing and the site plan approval. Other than that, that's everything. We don't have anything else to report.
Do we have a meeting coming up? Second part of January?
For Planning Commission, yes.
Yes.
It is oh yes, sorry. Sarah told me to pull that up. There are 2 home occupations. Let me pull up. Apologize. I knew I was missing
Are
something.
those the only 2 items that?
There's only 2 items so far on the agenda for next meeting. And it is 2 home occupations. It is the Saratoga Springs Singers Company and then Berry Batch Preschool. 2 Class 3 home occupations. So far, that's all we have. We don't have anything scheduled yet on February 9th.
But we will have a meeting on the 26th then.
But we will have a meeting on the 26th, yes.
Okay.
I'll be out of town, Mr. Chair.
All right.
FYI.
That's why we have 7 people. Do we need to go into a closed session tonight? Then I will adjourn this meeting until January 26th.
That was a good one.
Sometimes I get a good whack in.
I was not prepared.